Here's the story they tell. According to them, Mike Bickle wanted to build another wing onto his Wagner school. This is before Bickle was exposed. And so he wanted them to move to Kansas City. He wants them to move in with him. Bob and Sally, come here. This is the place I believe God is calling you. And they spent 3 days with Bickle. Bickle, how often does Mike Bickle spend 3 days with anybody? Well, they were the money bags. They get the special treatment. 3 days with just them. Hours and hours of time with Mike. He walks them through the whole prophetic history of the International House of Prayer, Kansas City. And it's hours and hours of a lot of made up stuff. And he tells them they're generals. You're generals in our story. You're part of this story too. You're generals. And he had them send bios of their kids over to Mike so he could learn all about their kids and get connected to them regularly. And he was texting with all of them. And they called him Uncle Mike. His kids called him Uncle Mike. There at the end of the 3 days they spent together, Mike gave them a special prophetic word. He prophesied that they would make billions of dollars, which did not come to pass. That they would be massive business leaders, which has not come to pass. And that they gave a significant amount of money to Mike Bickle because that's what you're supposed to do. It feels like the right thing. And the way he talks and the stories he tells, and you feel like you're a general and this is how I serve. And so they gave him significant amount of money. Cheon also was courting them, it seems. Cheon wanted them to move to H-Rock in Pasadena. That's his church. Pasadena. Not too far from me. I should go say hi to Che. So he wanted them to move to H-Rock. Emma Stark wanted them to move to where she lives. And Shawn Bolz wanted them to move where he lives in California. He gave them a prophetic word of knowledge when they first met that they now believe was just, he Googled their last name and saw it on Wikipedia. So I have the recording of this prophetic word. I've heard the recording. And it was the information from Wikipedia. They weren't even sure what it meant when it was given. They just kind of nodded and were like, oh, and then when they looked it up later, they were like, dude, that's just what Wikipedia says. And he confirmed before he gave them the word, he goes, is this how you spell your last name? And they go, yes. And he goes, oh, and then he gives them the word because he was probably trying to make sure that he looked up the right last name, that the spelling was accurate because he doesn't want another 105 slaughterhouse to happen to him. Stacy Campbell also wanted them to move out to where she is in Santa Clarita, to her healing rooms. There was a prophetic tug of war over these rich people, and I think that rich people experience this a lot in these movements. And of course you do. Of course, there's, when you have a lot of money, people will be interested in you because of your money. It's like with online, you have a lot of followers. People are interested in you because of your followers, not because of any other reason. It's weird. It creates weird, unreal social relationships sometimes, and I don't like any of that stuff. But when you add the prophetic element to it, and you add, I'm giving you a special word of prophecy, and God's calling you to do this, it becomes a highly manipulated spiritual abuse of rich people from these leaders. And that is what I believe happened. This is an audio recording, though. I'm going to share with you now. Never before heard. Nobody's heard this, really, not publicly. This audio recording is that rich couple. There's a prophetic tug of war going on, and Stacy Campbell is in the car with them. And she is going to warn them about Shawn Bolz because what Shawn wants them to move out to him. Stacy wants them to move out to her. Everybody wants them to move. They're the popular kids right now. So Bob and Sally are very popular. Now she gives them a warning. Now this is very important. This comes from 2022, September or October. Keep in mind that Bethel has postured as though these things may or may not really be true. Who knows for sure? Only the Lord knows. This is what behind the scenes they knew. They knew very well what was true. So listen to this warning from Stacy Campbell. And she tells you a whole bunch of stuff. I'm going to let it play. I may pause it here and there. We'll see.
Bolz is utterly and totally dangerous because he doesn't tell the truth. Oh. So, this is from Chris Valentin, who I know because an issue came up from one of Shawn Bolz's, that was very alarming. And finally he couldn't take it, so he told Patricia King, who told Che, and who told Chris Valentin. And Chris Valentin, because Bethel was very involved with Shawn Bolz, because everybody is believing for this greater works than Jesus has done type of prophetic that is in the Bible and pulling out these things. And
this is what I talk about revival culture. I could use a more technical term and call this the latter rain movement, or the belief that there is going to be this incredible spiritual transformation. You guys have to understand this context to get the full meaning of what you just heard. there's going to be this amazing Pentecost 2.0. That's what Brian Simmons calls it. Pentecost 2.0. We're going to do greater works than Jesus. We're going to do greater works than even the apostles. It'll be what the church was always meant to be. This is what Bethel's always marching towards. So when you have this need and you've been preaching this to your people and you get a faker like Shawn, he's extremely useful in stirring up your crowd and getting people to flock to your church. They're going to move to your fellowship because this is the hot spot where it's happening. So that sets the stage for why he was so important, why they were so hopeful about Shawn, why they were so ready to receive and promote him, because they have an unbiblical expectation prophetically about the future of the Christian church that leaves them open, and they teach this to their people, leaves them more open to frauds, spiritual frauds. I hope that makes sense. I do believe that that's very important to understand. All right, let's go back to the recording. The bottom line so far is everybody knew. Everybody knew. Patricia King, that recording I told you about, guess what? It was real. A separate witness came to me and gave me this completely independently, where they're admitting it. Patricia King knew, Cheon knew, Chris Valentin knew. Guess what? This was not secret. Well, it was secret to us, not to the elites.
We're in that era where I think it's going to start, but there's always a burnt earth prior to. And so, so on Monday off.
She's looking through her phone, I believe here, looking for specific messages so she could read them out loud between her and Chris.
August 22nd, I reached out to Chris because I know. So Shawn Bolz is who traveled with Shawn Bolz, told these gross stories of sexual immorality of Shawn Bolz. And that when he traveled with Shawn Bolz would...
Yeah, you're going to hear it very clearly here. I'm not going to censor out what she's about to say. So now what you're going to hear from Stacey Campbell, she's alleging these things are true. And I think that when you combine this together with all the other evidence we've seen, it really raises the credibility of all of it being true, right? There's what you don't hear from any of the leaders or the text messages or the conversations is anybody saying that Shawn's actually innocent. No, what you see is them responding as though they believed it was real. Now, I'm not going to censor this. I'm just going to play it as is. There's going to be some descriptive stuff in here a little bit, so you guys should be aware.
Masturbate in front of him. It made him very uncomfortable. And walk naked in front of him. Not wear clothes, and he's a guy. And so finally he couldn't take it, and he went and told other leaders because he didn't know what to do. Patricia reached out and tried to talk to Shawn. Shawn would not talk to her. So she talked to Che, and Che said, because Shawn said, I'm under Che's leadership. So don't talk to Chris because they were having him in regularly. And Shawn said to Chris and Bill, I'm not under Bethel, I'm under Che. And Che tried to talk to him and it didn't go, so I said...
Okay, here's the back and forth as I understand it, from talking to witnesses apart from this recording, was that the initial thing was Patricia thought, yeah, Che's going to do this, he'll take care of it. And according to Stacey Campbell, Shawn says, I'm under him. That's who I'm under. And it didn't go. I don't know what that means. Then Che says, you should have Chris do, and I'm actually going to share with you guys a screenshot. I'll just share it now. Screenshot from Patricia King emailing one of the victims. And she says on April 7th of 2020, I'm so sorry to hear about this. I'm not sure I can help any more than I have. This is when Bethel's currently investigating Shawn and stuff. He says, Chris told me that there are guys working with Shawn. I think he mentioned Danny Silk and one other, maybe Bob Hassel, which I think she means Bob Hassan, who's on Shawn's board and co-authored a book with him. Should you try to communicate directly with Chris, sharing your disappointment, which ultimately he did. From what I understand, Shawn has not offered you an apology. So if this is being dealt with, I believe that would be a first step for Shawn's turnaround. That might be a place where you could start. She's giving him advice, but he's looking for someone to be a voice. I honestly don't know what else I can do, right? You make a video and you say, hey guys, here's what I found out. And then you add your credibility and the strength of your testimony to these people who are ultimately relatively powerless in your movement. You said, I recorded your story and submitted it to Shay, who told me to connect with Chris. I CC'd Shay into my emails to and from Chris. Chris said he had guys assigned. I'm deeply saddened. In the private conversation, it's very much like, I care about you. I'm concerned about you. I want you to do well. In the public actual things, nobody publicly called him out. So it's not as though there was like a callous, I don't care about what you're going through. That wasn't said. It was just cover-up culture prevents them from taking any actual actions to be a voice for the victims. That's the problem. It keeps them from speaking aloud to the people who they assisted in deceiving so that they might come out of those deceptions, because that would hurt the prophetic movement worldwide, supposedly. Okay, so she goes on. She reached out Monday, August 22nd.
Reached out on Monday, August 22nd. So this was over a year ago. I've known this, maybe 2. And I said, has there been? And so Chris Valentin flew. So I know this from Chris's direct mouth. He said, I flew to Shawn Bolz on my own dime, and I spent the entire day saying Shawn. Then Shawn denied everything and basically tried to make the other guy a liar. But the other guy was so broken. And to have a Christian leader masturbating in the same room as you and walking naked, that is while you're in the room with him. So on August 22nd, I reached out to Chris and said, has there been any restoration with Shawn Bolz? Because Chris, their great desire is always to restore fallen ministers.
Again, that great desire, it has frequently, or at least in my opinion, a number of times, turned into re-enabling abusers. So this desire that Bethel has to restore fallen leaders, which itself is a good desire, it doesn't play out without cover-up culture. That's the problem. Let me get smaller. Schwink. All right.
And it's part of the ministry of Shiloh that when they fall, and Shawn was directly under Paul Cain, who also was accused of homosexual acts, and the healing rooms took him in and put somebody on him day and night.
Paul Cain was accused of specifically targeting his employees with homosexual behaviors. Think about that.
So that he could not sin again. Because once a person has been abused by a person in authority that they look up to, they're devastated for the rest of their life. Like it is like a terror. And so Chris' response, you can read this from Chris, but this is just the text. I will then send you the email. Hi, Chris, has there been any restoration with Shawn Bolz? He says, definitely not Shawn. I said, okay, thank you so much. I appreciate you responding, because I know that Shawn is now being asked by Georgian, etc. But Chris said, Shawn will never come to Bethel again because of his lack of humility and repentance.
Chris also said, as far as I know, it's alleged. So this Georgian Banov guy, this is a guy that invited Shawn to speak. This is after these things were known. And everybody in their circles, their leadership circles, they're all like telling each other about it, and Chris is supposedly warning a lot of people. Georgian Banov was scheduling Shawn to still speak at this prophetic training event. I'll share more about in a minute.
And then this is the next one from his email. So I sent him an email because I didn't know if he got my Shawn Bolz. And my question was, so Julie said, I've got to get online to do this. Okay. Julie asked me, because she sent me the email where Georgian was having Shawn Bolz come to a conference, and she said, has there been any...
This is the conference. Per their website, Shawn did end up speaking at this Georgian Banov conference in March and April of 2023. It was several weeks long, along with Stacey Campbell. and many others. Heidi Baker, James Gall, Barbie Breathitt, right? And I'm not saying all these guys knew about Shawn, but certainly some of them did. Certainly Stacey Campbell did. She went and did the same conference that she's like, oh, Georgian's still going to have him. Shawn Bolz is dangerous. She's warning the rich people because she wants their wallets, I think. And yet there is no warning that goes out to the rest of the people at that conference, like they're not that important. Insane.
Restoration with Shawn, and I said, let me check with Chris. And okay, things are not working. Hi, Chris. Why is this? Normally it works. Chris. Hi, Chris. I was wondering if there's been any updates with Shawn Bolz. And anyway, I'm having a little difficulty downloading it. There's only one bar. But essentially, and I can let you read them all, he said no, he said, but definitely not Shawn. He said, as far as I'm concerned, Shawn Bolz is a deceiver, and I will not have him back or I'm trust him. And so I'm concerned for you because I love you. I'm giving you the warning that he's dangerous. His behavior is bad. He's been caught red-handed. And he's unrepentant. So
I got to remind you guys, this is September or October of 2022. It was less than a year later. It was like March or something, maybe, of 2023, when Bill Johnson went and endorsed Shawn's book and Shawn on TBN.
But you wrote that this was one of the most exciting books that you had read. Why was that?
Well, the book by itself is incredible. Knowing the life that backs it up adds a power to it because it's so practical. It's what you dream of. It's like if you could have a perfect relationship with the Lord and see its impact on humanity, that's what it would look like.
Chris says he's a deceiver. I will not allow him to minister here. Publicly says, as far as I know, it's alleged. Bill goes and endorses him. But they distance themselves. Their ministries are separate. So what does this look like? Cover-up culture.
I'm afraid. And this was from August 22nd. So this is new. It's not old.
Recent.
And I know you're calling to invest in the prophetic and you're amazing. But I'm just asking you to pray about your part.
Thank you.
And in that, because he's, to me, he's not only dangerous for the body of Christ, that a lot of times the people that affiliate with him go down when they go down.
Aha! He's dangerous to the body of Christ, but we're not warning them. But we don't want you to affiliate with him. So you're part of the inner circle because of your wallet. So you I love. You I want to protect. You I care about. You're the special ones. But like Elijah Stevens, he wasn't the special one, right? To me, he is, but he wasn't. To the Lord, he is, but he wasn't to the leadership at Bethel. But Jubilee Dawn, who experienced great harm because of Shawn, connected to Shawn for sure, not special enough, not important enough. I love you. I want to protect you. So I'm warning you about Shawn. Only counts to the elite because that's the culture of cover-up. It's a caste system. Okay, in this next clip, Stacey talks about a document allegedly showing Shawn Bolz faked prophecy by data mining Facebook and Google. This is a document we have not seen, that has not been released publicly. I've asked for it. They spread it around to each other. They just wouldn't show you.
Document by a guy Shawn Bolz was looking into. didn't feel good. So what he did was he noted the names of every person Shawn Bolz was prophesying with, and then went on their Facebook pages, and every single bit of information that Shawn prophesied, you could find it on page 1 or page 2. If you just Googled, you could find the whole thing. And there was nothing that Shawn was prophesying that was from unknown revelation. It was only on. And so he sent me a document, only 20 pages long. This is what Shawn said. This is on the front page of their Facebook pages. This is on the second page. If you Google the person that is their son, that you find it. It was all there, and it was highly incriminating. And in a court of law, and he was also tried to confront him, and Shawn made him the villain, the bad guy.
They knew that there was a guy who tried to confront Shawn years ago, and that Shawn made that guy into the bad guy, and none of these people were helping and defending him. I think they might be talking about Jason Smedley. I'll be sharing a tweet. He replied to me recently on Twitter. And I had been wanting to talk to him for a long time. I'll be sharing something. He said, this guy tried to expose Shawn, and Paul Cain came after him and made him the bad guy, right? He suffered greatly because of this stuff. He says he's convinced that the leaders all knew Shawn was faking for a long time and they just didn't care. That makes a lot of sense to me, okay? That makes a lot of sense. So she might be talking about him. I don't know. But it makes a lot of sense.
And when a bully does that, pushes off their sin onto another person, that's the grossest to me. Because you get a chance to fall on the rock, or the rock falls on you. So, my trust level with Shawn Bolz is very low. Because in 2 open opportunities had completely separate to repent, he didn't know.
You might be interested to know that Stacey Campbell talked a lot of dirt about a lot of different leaders with this couple. She seems to have something on everybody. But that's the Shawn Bolz information. What she didn't tell the couple was that she was going to be attending the Dream Interpretation and Seer Realm Masterclass with Shawn Bolz and Georgian Banov not too long after she had this conversation. So there she is. We've got Shawn there. You've got Stacey Campbell there. You've got Tommy Ariomi there. Some of you might know that name. James Gall there. And Georgian Banov, Heidi Baker. How deep does it go is the question. I don't know. But I know that the trust should be broken when it comes to this sphere of leaders. You should not trust their discernment, and you cannot shop your discernment out to them, and you don't want to follow their culture because it's a culture of cover-up. After this is when Bill Johnson went on TBN and endorsed Shawn Bolz. After all of this.
Knowing the life that backs it up adds a power to it.
Why wasn't Shawn Bolz exposed? Because none of the leaders that the people were asking for help would help. They wouldn't have stopped these people from going public. Most likely they wouldn't have tried to stop them, but they don't want to be part of it. They're not going to be connected to it, and they're not going to help them do it. And they won't provide them with the safety and covering that they will need, because guess what happens when you go public, like someone already tried, as Stacey Campbell said, Shawn Bolz makes them the bad guy, makes them the villain, because Shawn obviously has much more weight, even now has much more weight in these circles than some random person who's trying to blow the whistle on him. You need the leaders to lay their life down to protect the sheep. That's just what's required. So Cheon backed off, Chris backed off, Patricia King backed off. It's ultimately, there's nothing they can do. They're powerless, supposedly. Now, I've talked to the sources, my several different sources, a number of different people, and they all seem to agree, pretty much all the ones I've asked about it, agree on one idea. And that is the idea that it was ultimately Bill Johnson that stopped Shawn Bolz from being exposed, that it was not something Bill wanted to happen. And remember that Bill is the one who openly endorsed him after the fact. So let me say this next thing very carefully. I'll read this out to you. I believe that the problem is way bigger than what we know. That if any one of these leaders just came out and exposed the fakers and abusers that they know about, there would be so many, it would be devastating, and that's why they won't. So why wasn't Shawn exposed? Why didn't they warn everyone? Why only warn the rich people and the leaders and then distance yourselves and not tell the public? You know, Bethel talked to some of the same witnesses I have, that they interviewed some of the same people that I've talked to, that they knew this stuff. It's crazy. So what does it mean when you distance yourself but you don't warn the people? It means you're not protecting the sheep. It means you might be concerned about your own protection and reputation. It means you might be worried about logical outcomes. That if we have the kind of culture that calls this guy out, who else are they going to call out? Am I going to get called out? And that's a scary thing, but that's what 1 Timothy 5:19 and 20 says. That's my theme verse for this series of exposure and cover-up culture stuff. Is it says, rebuke in the presence of all, that the rest also may fear. Yeah, I'm worried about if I hold others accountable, people might hold me accountable, but I'm supposed to be worried about that. Like I should live with that fear because there is accountability in the body of Christ for us. Now we need to talk about the trigger video. First, I need to take a little break. I've been talking too much.